Well, hello. I am Rachel Weaver, the Education Director with Scrap Creative Reuse, and joined here today by some of our board members and advisory council volunteer members. And we're going to talk a little bit about our Earth Day silent auction fundraiser and some of the creative reuse items that are featured there, and just a little discussion about creative reuse and sort of creating our own materials or our creative materials and crafts that are inspired in this silent auction. So Caitlin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Caitlin Burr. I use she, her pronouns. I am one of the advisory council members out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. I contributed a number of canned goods for our fundraiser, which included reused glass containers. Unfortunately, the lids can't be reused, and then cute fabric from scrap to decorate stuff. I'm also a scrapbooker and avid gardener. So
wonderful, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Kasman. I use she, her pronouns. I am actually a member of the Scrap Board, and I'm also a volunteer at the Baltimore location for Scrap. And I contributed some handmade quilts to the auction. I'm still pretty new, but I source, almost all my fabrics either come from Scrap or someone else's leftover project, or I've had hiding in the basement for years. So it was very exciting to get to play and come up with interesting solutions when you're not starting with, 4 yards of fresh fabric.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Ty Calandriello, and I am also a member of the board. I'm located in Portland, Oregon, so Scrap PDX is my location. And I've made a number of mostly jewelry related items, and I have also sourced with the generous donation of friends some additional items in the auction. But the items that I did make in honor of Earth Month are mostly jewelry, a lot of pieces made out of leather and sterling silver and freshwater pearls. And I can talk a little bit more about the process I went through later.
Great, awesome. Hi, Karen, thanks for joining us.
Hi.
We're just doing brief introductions before we dive into some of the discussion questions. So feel free to introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Karen Rivenberg. I'm a member of the Scrap Board of Directors, and I am an active paper crafter. You can see some of my studio work behind me, stamp sets and punches and ink and all kinds of things. So I make a lot of cards and notebooks. I also really love to make 3D items like party favors, little treat holders and that type of thing. So that's mainly what I do.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you all so much. This is a great variety of options to kind of discuss. I think it'll be really interesting to learn a little bit more about how you sourced materials and how that might have informed your process. So we can continue sort of going around in it, but feel free to have kind of a conversation around this as well. Or if I'm missing something that you want to add, feel free to throw that in there too. Yeah, Caitlin, do you want to start just in how you might have sourced those jars from Ann Arbor? Do you collect them over time? Oh, you're muted.
I muted myself. It's inevitable. It's Zoom. I'm a gardener. That was a new pandemic hobby for me, but it was going to happen with my yard anyway. It was just an extra excuse to not kind of go anywhere else. And so most of what I can comes from my own source, from my own backyard. So fortunately, like only minor things, like I haven't taught myself how to make vinegar yet and those kind of things to do that. Jars are a mix of Scrap gets them in on occasion. My parents are big estate sale folks, so a lot of secondhand that way. And then because there was a shortage, I kind of did have to resort to grocery stores and those things as well for the lids, because you can't reuse those if you're canning straightforward, but if you just need to put it in the fridge, it's fine.
Mhm.
And then the cute fabric and decoration and markers definitely come from scrap, because rolling fabric is my favorite volunteer work. So that
So you get to see it all first to kind of
yeah, absolutely, I have first dibs.
Yeah. That's the perks of volunteering at Scrap.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, speaking of that, one of the 2 quilts I put into the auction, the actual whole top was donated as is, from somebody's, stash of fabrics,
Oh, wow.
which made it a really easy decision. I'm just looking at it like, well, this is absolutely delightful.
Yeah.
And then the challenge is, going around with it to all the rolled fabrics to find something that works for the background that's going to be long enough. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's like it was kind of talking about, sometimes there's shortages of things and you have to get really creative, which is one of the things I really like about sourcing all the materials from Scrap. Sort of your more mainstream traditional quilting, and it's like 100% cotton fabrics and patterns tell you how much you need, etc.
Mhm.
But I love being able to just grab all kinds of fabrics, some of which probably should never go into a quilt, but I'm going to do it anyway. And trying to build something cohesive out of whatever has come in from other folks. It's just a lot of fun to do it that way. Although you'll get there and you're like 3/4 of the way and you're like, I cannot for the life of me find one more thing that matches. And then you end up like pawing through. We have a little tiny scrap bin that's like anything from like 1-inch squares to weird triangles to whatever, and sort of like piecing that together to get enough to make whatever square you're trying to make.
Right.
So, but I think the challenge is part of the fun of it.
Yeah. And how do other quilters feel about reuse? Is that kind of discussed in the
I know for me, I when I started sort of doing this, I liked using Scrap because I didn't care if I messed anything up.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time, I follow like 8 or 10 blogs that are specifically scrap quilting.
Nice.
Although it's funny because a lot of those folks who blog about their scrap quilts also, it's the scraps from the regular quilts they make.
Right.
Like, oh, and it's super easy. You have all these things that are the same size. And I'm like, well, so no, I'm starting with the weird stuff.
Yes.
But yeah, no, there's definitely a community of scrap quilters out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because I've been looking at some of like, you can donate quilts that you've made to various places, but a lot of them do have requirements about what kind of fabric is in there. And so it's kind of a bummer when you look at something like, well, I don't know if all of these are 100% cotton. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but I've never had a friend complain about being handed a quilt made of all sorts of weird things.
Exactly. Yeah. I love it when there's different textures and kind of
right? Yeah.
I've seen art pieces that are quilts. Yeah.
I'm always in awe of those folks.
Yeah.
I'm lucky if I get a corner to match up.
And so Ty, yours were the leather earrings. I didn't realize those were yours. Those are great.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, leather earrings and the pearl necklace, as well as this modern amulet. It's made with acrylic scrap cuts. And I grew up thrifting and going to yard sales. And so when I first discovered scrap in Portland, it was part of that kind of that joy of discovering things and just going to look and browse and to collect. So for me, more often than not, I don't have like a thing in mind that I'm looking for. I just want to see what's available. I'm always looking for something that has a lot of potential, something that's like a really great material. I work with a lot of different materials in my design practice. And I'm also looking for things that are available in multiples. Because as a designer, it's you know, if you like what Rachel was just talking about, when you go through the whole exercise of like figuring out how to make it work, it's kind of nice if you can then make multiples of the items because of the level of design effort required for you to solve the problem and to connect things. So I like things that are I can scale up the size of the project. And I also like how working with unique offcuts and scraps of things that I can identify at least has enough potential to grab it and then store it in my studio later, is it also gets me to think of like new technologies I can use to apply to transform it into something new, or like production hacks, or like creating new patterns as a result. So I get a lot of joy out of that.
I've heard that before too, of people getting into, like, designers getting into creating their own patterns because you have to. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like with the leather earrings, I used a couple of techniques where I used marine grade permanent adhesive vinyl and cut it out on a digital desktop cutting machine and then applied it to the leather surface. But also it was like taking these scrap sheets that were like odd sizes and then using a die cut machine to kind of pass them through to try to get, you know, a higher quality production result. And so you're always kind of like just like rearranging and kind of manually manipulating, but you get a lot of joy out of it because you realize this is something that could have otherwise just ended up in a landfill.
Yeah. And Karen, you have a couple of handmade items in the auction, and I know you've taught some different classes with scrap too. Oh, sorry, you're on mute also. It's okay.
Yeah, so I do, you know, if I'm making, you know, cards or favors, it's often using a lot of new paper, and I have enough that I can never use up in my lifetime. I like to say I have a mini scrap at my home, but I also am always looking at scrap for things that I can cover with paper or repurpose. I make a lot of notebooks, and so I'm always looking at scrap. Sometimes companies have donated notebooks that they had for a specific purpose they no longer need, and so those are wonderful for covering and, you know, making something really beautiful with. Just have to find a way to either remove or cover their logos. I also, when I give gifts to people, I'm as much about the packaging as the gifts, and I try not to use single purpose packaging when I give gifts. I have, you know, made things out of fabric scraps from scrap, and especially bought a lot of silk samples from sample books that people have donated, and I've made a lot of really nice packaging from that. And often I'll put a label, say I have made a wine bag, and I will make a tag that to attach the wine bag that will have kind of a history of how that bag was used. So when someone gives the wine to somebody, they say, okay, this was given from this person to this person, and then the next person fills in their information. So it not only provides a link, but it is very blatant about, we expect you to reuse this.
Right.
I also make a lot of notebooks myself. There's a printer I have saving things that for me that would normally they would just throw in the recycle bin. So I've
That's
used
your own private connection there.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's great.
so whatever I don't want or need, then, you know, I'll donate those to those other items to scrap. Also when I give a lot of gifts for for gift bags, I don't buy new gift bags. I usually make my gift bags. And one of the things that I've offered is a class on packaging using upcycled material. So I'll make gift bags out of old maps, old interesting papers, or odd things that you will find at scrap. I mean, gift bags are so easy to make. I made last year a lot of really large bows. I think there's a picture in the auction out of film.
That's cool. Yeah.
And those were really popular, and those are fun to make. Use die cuts to cut up calendars to use for gift tags. I mean, there's just, and fabric, of course, just folding fabric around a gift is a nice way of using it. So when I'm at Scrap, I always have my eye out for things that I can use in gift packaging.
That's great. I love how it came up multiple times that these are used in gift giving. These are like in creating things to give to people, and to try to sort of showcase reuse as a part of that gift. I think that's a really wonderful sort of shared element of all of this. I also thought it was interesting that a lot of you mentioned starting with reuse first. Sometimes like you do have to go get lids or something, but do we want to talk at all about how that process of trying to reuse first can be a big shift in our consumer behaviors? I always try to find everything thrifted first, a reuse center or just whatever, even shoes, because there's people who wear a pair of shoes once and they were done with it after that, but I will wear it for the next 2 years. So it's, but that shift in mentality to just remember to look reuse first, and maybe how you see that in your work or in your art or just in your practices too.
Well, I have to admit, I come by it pretty honest. My mom is a huge thrifter, particularly for clothes.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of really fond memories of heading to the Goodwill or the Salvation Army, because that's what was, closest for us.
Yeah.
And then occasionally graduating to consignment shopping when we wanted to feel really fancy.
Right, totally graduating to it, yeah.
But yeah, so honestly, like just already being comfortable walking into that kind of space made such a big difference when I got to the point where I'm spending my own money, and it's like, oh, why wouldn't I go check that?
Yeah,
first? Because I'm got to make that dollar go as far as possible.
Yeah. That's so funny, the graduation and consignment, because I remember when I was old enough to like fit into, like I was like big enough, old enough to fit into clothes at the more like hip thrift stores that my older sister had already been going to. I was like, oh my gosh, I can finally go to Buffalo Exchange or whatever. Like, that's so funny. It just reminded me of that.
I have to say, one of my favorite things actually here in Maryland, because at the time there wasn't anything when I was growing up in Connecticut, was being introduced to Savers.
Oh yeah, I've been to a Savers before. Those are amazing. Yeah.
So I'm not gonna lie, one of my favorite things is that it's not a religiously affiliated thrift store.
Yeah.
Which really like adds to the comfort level, but just they do these mixed bags of really random collections of items, which sometimes it's a craft supply and sometimes it's weird tiny figurines, and it's like it's almost like going to one of those gachapon games, because you're like, what random bag can I take home and then see what it will become? So I always really love that thrill of the hunt. I think is what I get from scrap and reuse and thrifting and flea markets, and
absolutely, yeah,
it's just so much fun.
Yeah, Rachel,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Karen.
I was going to say, my family has gotten used to me at gift giving events, looking for things that can be reused. I'm the one, I don't say don't rip the paper if they use regular wrapping paper, but I'm the one who gathers the things to be reused. I'm always on the lookout for, oh no, don't throw that away. You could use this for this or this, and I'll give them 5 ideas of what they could use that for. And I know sometimes, they laugh at me about it, but I do recall visiting my sister who lives in another state, and she proudly opens up her closet and she shows me 2 large shopping bags filled with all the reusable bags, that most of which I had made over the years, bags and tags and things. So when I am with family and close friends, I do try to look for ways that um, they can use things rather than just mindlessly throwing them away.
Yeah, and that they can reuse those in their gift giving, and you won't be. Yeah, you said your sister had saved all of those. Does she use some of them when she gives?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
it wasn't
good.
that she had saved them. She'd been reusing them for
Okay,
years.
good. Yeah, yeah.
And yes, so the family definitely. And I've gotten some gift bags back that I've used.
Okay, you've got your own gift bags back. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I proudly have a very large gift bag that I've used. I remember it was $5 about 20 years ago, and it seemed like so much money, but I really needed this for something. And it's about 4 feet tall. That has been used every year for the past 20 years between my husband and I. In some way, we've had to peel off multiple layers of tape, but I feel so proud whenever I use that bag.
Yeah, that is $20 well spent. Yeah.
Ah.
$5 20 years ago. That's what it was. Yeah, yeah.
So
now it would be $20. Yeah.
one of the things that I found like surprisingly exciting to do with gift bags specifically is to pack lunch in them. And it's like you're giving yourself a present every day.
There you go.
So if
yeah.
you have not, like if you have that stack of like old gift bags and things, highly recommend just popping
like
your snacks or your lunch for the day, bringing it into work. Every day is a party.
There you go.
I love that. Rachel, I was going to jump in and answer your question about, what does it mean for consumption habits, really? It's what you're getting at, and having to use new things. And I think, all of us as artists and designers, we're supportive of the act of creative reuse, which takes an entire community of people who are willing to donate things, people who are willing to organize it and make it available for purchase, and then people who want to engage in it. And if obviously, if you really want to avoid it ending up eventually in the landfill, you have to upgrade its overall quality, right? You have to add value to it. And that takes that whole design process we were talking about earlier. So in most cases for me, having to add something new is required, just because otherwise it could take a really long time to collect all the components together.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just some components like Caitlin was talking about, you just need to use new, like when you seal things with lids. So for me, I like to combine things that seemingly don't go together. So if you can take, things that are opposites. And so if you can take something that's upcycled that was, potentially destined for the landfill, and then put it with something kind of luxurious or premium, and it transforms it, and then it adds up to something that perhaps hopefully someone would want to have for many years to come, then I consider that a design success. And I think that anyone who is thinking about their footprint on the earth and trying to slow down the rate of acceleration of climate change for our planet, this has to be the future. The amount of landfill waste in the world overall, we're really pushing the limits. The amount of waste that went into landfills during COVID alone, if you think about just masks and gloves, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think that the problem continues to grow, and there's a lot of what I've heard here today, I agree with, joy and purpose and trying to reuse things and go through that creative exercise of figuring out how to maximize its next life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, there's and there's so much stuff that we even make that's new that it could be it might take a lot, it might be harder for it to biodegrade or for it to, and so what are ways that those can its most fullest life can be used, and I do like what you mentioned about or it was the adding value, and it was sort of what seems like they might be disconnected. So I like with your earrings, they're made of leather, which we associate maybe with I don't know, for me, cowboy and kind of, but then there are these really soft, delicate designs that you have made. Or Karen, I also thought about your film bows, how it's it's such a unique way of showing sort of this historical like film negatives, but it's like for a new celebration, because parties are always celebrating something new or something. So I like how it sort of lets us be playful with that, while sort of having this this underlying or overarching sort of environmental impact notion that I think a lot of us are wanting to make sure that that's understood. You know, I think a lot of artists that are incorporating reuse, even in hybrid with new items or things like that, because like if you're making jewelry, you might need to buy a new jewelry piece that it attaches to, or definitely really clean other things well. But I think that it's something that more people are starting to realize it's important to sort of mention that as important during Earth Day, and outside of that, and seeing how the environmental impacts are, and climate change is much more widely discussed now, that people can talk about reuse and, oh yeah, I go to the thrift store, or I go, buy secondhand. But I think now people are starting to catch on to sort of that importance of finding reuse options first. And yeah, Caitlin, I love that your food elements come from your garden, because that's also a really important part, is just kind of what good we can grow from the earth too. Is there any sort of closing remarks that anybody wants to kind of chime in, and then we'll do a little plug for our fundraiser.
I actually wanted to ask everyone, how many visits to a scrap did it take before you started to volunteer?
I actually am on 0, because when I moved to Ann Arbor, when I move anywhere, my initial reaction is to, hey, I'm going to volunteer at some places because that's where I'll meet friends. That's where, so that's kind of my motivation behind it. So I was looking on this kind of local volunteer website that Scrap had a thing on, but wasn't necessarily affiliated with. And so they were looking for new council members. So I came to a council meeting never having stepped foot in a Scrap previously.
That is amazing.
But
and then the next and then literally volunteered to organize their fundraiser that same day. Like, so 0.
That's amazing. It was a longer path for me just because of other commitments that I had, and definitely the amount of time I've been able to visit Scrap has accelerated over the years. But I had been a customer, I'm gonna guess probably a decade before, I saw that email go out saying looking for board members. Is anyone interested? And I was like, absolutely, yes.
Awesome.
I guess I may have to walk back. I did step foot in it as a child.
Oh wow! During Scrapbox.
Yeah. So,
wow.
So in a previous location, when I was like yay high.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I had gone in, but I certainly had never volunteered at that point.
Wow.
I was a scrap shopper for a number of years while I had a very busy and demanding career. And then as soon as I retired, I had lots of time on my hands. And once I caught up on my sleep, I started volunteering at Scrap.
But
it took me two visits.
Nice. Two times to walk in. Yeah, I shopped at ours a lot. I would always go there for party supplies for fundraisers and gift wrapping supplies for gifts and like little things like that. And then as soon as I could join, I tried. So we all got here as soon as we could, I think.
It's a magical place.
It is, yeah. And so our Earth Day silent auction fundraiser has a lot of awesome creative reuse items. It's not just creative reuse goodies that we've compiled, but there's some classes on there. Karen, aren't you offering a class or two? Yeah, and some of the other board members are offering classes, and some other friends of scrap offering things. And I believe there might even be sort of stuff added throughout, and we might, as this video will maintain, we might do these in the future too, and always hope to showcase sort of that creative energy from the artists and contributors to it. So we'll put that information with this video. And I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to speak with me and putting yourselves out there. I know a lot of you are usually behind the screens or behind the scenes helping with scrap. And so I really appreciate you coming up on the screens to share this. I hope that our followers enjoy it. I know I get a lot out of these conversations, and I learn a lot from you all every time we get to talk.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This was really fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Good. Thank you. All right.